Hello friends, we are back, and as the exam is approaching very fast, so we are today going to discuss December 2019 starting from question number 30, right? And we will go till question number 40. So we are increasing the frequency of the questions for the students so that they can prepare better. Let's start it. Now we know that for question number 29, the correct answer is second and fourth. Both are correct. This is correct, this is correct. So both second and fourth is the correct answer for question number 29. Right, details have been given in the solution. One can refer to them also. Now let's move to the next question, which is question number 30. Yeah. So it's a very good question. So if you see the question number 30, if I talk about, right, question number 30, if I talk about, so which of the following chemical organic species are insoluble in acid or alkali? So if I talk about that which among the following chemical species is or are insoluble, right? So they are talking about insoluble. So let me tell you that humic acid is dissolved in base, right? And fulvic acid is soluble in both acid and base. So these are not an option because they are asking that insoluble in acid or alkali, right? So humin is the substance, right? Humin is the substance, and this is very well given in like all other text also. If you study some of the standard books for soil, so it is mentioned there. Just a second, guys. Yeah, so fulvic acid basically is soluble in both acid and base. So if I talk about fulvic acid, it dissolves in both acid and base. So this is not an option. Humic acid, it is dissolved in base only. Right? It is dissolved in base only. Right? So this is also not an option. Then if we talk about humin is not soluble anywhere. So humin is the correct option. So option number 3 is the correct answer for question number 30. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in this? Question number 30. Anyone having any doubt in this? Anyone? Okay. 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 Now let's move to the question number 31. So question number 31 is basically based on the Lotka-Volterra model, which is one of the pre-predator model concept, and it has been repeatedly being asked many times in the NTA exam, right? So it says consider the following statement about Lotka-Volterra model, right? And this is very well given in your literature also you provide. So it says that which of the following statement are correct. So you have to identify the correct statement, right? So both the populations of prey and predator oscillate sinusoidally. Absolutely correct, because they oscillate sinusoidal like in a curve, right? One is like this, then other one is like this. Right? So if one is like this, the other one is like this. Right? So they will for sure going to be cut each other, or better if we draw like them this. If one is like this, and another one will be yeah. So one increase, other decrease, other increase, and the one decrease, right? So this is the concept. Yeah. So this is the correct statement. Both they oscillate sinusoidally like a wave. This is correct. Then the second statement they says that there is a phase difference of pi by 2 between the prey and predator population. Absolutely correct, because one follow the almost sine curve, then there is a phase difference of pi by 2. 90 degree का difference होता है दोनों के बीच में waves में, जो diagrammatically we represent on the graph, right? So both the statement are correct. So there is a phase difference of pi by 2 between prey and predator wave, right? Then the third statement, so both this is true, A is true, B is true. Then it is saying population of prey and predator are directly proportional to each other. This is absolutely wrong. They are inversely proportional, right? One will increase, another one decrease. Population of prey and predator are inversely proportional to each other. Absolutely inversely also not there, right? Absolutely inversely are also not there, right? So according to the model presumptions, or according to the model's assumption, only A and B statement are correct. So first is the correct option for question number 31, which is Lotka-Volterra model. So first is the correct option. Is it clear to everyone? Now you see some of the explanation why it is so. So you can see here that okay, clear. Then you can see here that the Lotka-Volterra competition model describes outcome of competition between the two species over ecological time. Because one species can competitively exclude other species on ecological time, the competitively inferior species may increase the range of food types and it eats, other survives. However, response of species to interspecific competition in evolutionary time, interspecific between the two species, opposite at what occur in ecological time, competitor generally will specialize on particular resource type. This resource partitioning that occur over evolutionary time actually results in decrease or absence of competition between the two species. So this is the nutshell of the model. Then there are few statements. So Lotka-Volterra equation was given by Lotka and Volterra in this are based on the assumption that the predator population intrinsically shrink. These were the assumptions. The prey population intrinsically grow. A large prey population leads to large predator population. A large predator population leads to smaller prey population. So these all are some of the assumptions, right? So according to this, the first and second statement, these are some of the things, some of the equations which have been made over this based on the population density and their habits, right? So these are about Lotka-Volterra model. So both first, so you can see that like this is the propagation, right? You can see that this is the propagation type, prey and predator. So this was about question number 31, which was based on Lotka-Volterra model. Hope it is clear to everyone. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, though. So what do you mean by Ritu, like C and D? Please repeat. Are you asking about the options or you are asking something about else? See, option इसलिए wrong है because population of prey and predator are directly proportional to each other. This is not correct. That's why one is wrong. Population of prey and predator are inversely proportional. They are not absolutely inverse also. Up to some extent, if predator will increase, then prey will decrease. After that, it will not have that much impact, right? So that's why both C and D statement is incorrect. Is it clear? Right. Okay, now let's move to the next question. This is question number 32. Yeah. So next question is question number 32. So it says that when a stable layer exists below the stack height, right? So it's something like that. Let us suppose this is your chimney, right? And stable layer exists below the stake height, and you are having a stable layer here, right? and an unstable layer above, which of the following type of plume layer is expected? It's not, it's lofting. It's lofting plume time, right? When a stable layer exists below the stack height and unstable layer above, which of the following type of plume layer is expected to be observed? It's lofting. It will never come down. It will never come down. It will remain above the layer, right? It has been discussed in your literature also. So it's a fourth option, which is lofting plume. I'll show you. So you can see here, lofting occur when there is a strong lapse rate above the inversion. Inversion, you know, this condition diffusion of rapid upwards but downward diffusion does not penetrate the inversion layer. Under these conditions, emission will not reach the surface. So as we generally know that the temperature decrease as we go up, but in the case of inversion, it will be reverse. It will increase, means the hot layer is above but the cold layer is below, right? So that is the case of inversion. And you can see here, yeah, inversion, this have been shown. You can see here this one. Yeah. So you can see here, inversion layer below and lapse rate aloft. So lofting is the correct answer, right? Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt? Anyone having any doubt in this? Okay. So now let's move to the next question, which is question number 33. So question number 33, you can see it's a statistics question, which of the following measure of skewness is based on the distance of upper and lower quartile from the median value in the data set, right? So it's like Q3 and Q1, so upper quartile and lower quartile you were talking about. Yeah, it's no doubt, you are absolutely right. It's Bowley's coefficient of skewness. It's Bowley's coefficient of skewness, or third is the correct option for this. We will see the details, why it is, because in question they have mentioned that distance of upper and the lower quartile, right? So we will see the explanation. Yeah, it's Bowley's coefficient of skewness. Third is the correct answer. Now see that skewness, you know that it is basically a measure of symmetry. The meaning of skewness is lack of symmetry, and skewness is an idea of the concentration of higher lower data central value. So you can see that for a symmetric distribution, the two quartile Q1 and Q3 are equidistant from the median. So median is a middle point. So you can see that for symmetrical distribution, it should be equidistant, means Q3 minus Q2 is equal to Q2 minus Q1. So Q1 is first quartile, Q2 is second quartile, Q3 third quartile. If the distribution is not symmetric, then skewed, then the distance is Q3 not equal to the distance Q2 minus Q1. That we call as that data हमारा skewed है, whether it is negatively skewed or positively skewed, that depends. And if you talk about Bowley's coefficient of skewness, it's a relative measure of skewness and divided by SB, and it is like Q3. So we can write it in a simple manner like Q3 minus Q2, okay, plus Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q3 minus Q1, because ultimately it will become minus of 2Q2 if I will see the numerator. So this is the formula for Bowley's coefficient of skewness, right? So this is the correct option, and here you can see that formula for ith quartile.
which can be calculated, but that is not relevant here. Then type of skewness, you can see here we have negatively skewed, positively skewed, and symmetric or not skewed. So this you can see we have negatively skewed. Okay, so then mean is less than median, less than mode, and positively skewed, mean is more than median than mode. Positive direction, and this is symmetrical where mean is equal to median is equal to mode. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everyone? Question number 33. Everyone? Okay. Now let's move to question number 34. Question number 34 we will move. Yeah, it's a very good question. And it's a very simple question. It's also from statistics. So gender, like gender, you have male, female, and transgender. So it's an example of which of the following types of variable. Right. So gender is which type of variable? So no doubt it's a nominal variable. Right. So gender is basically a nominal variable. All of you know that. Yeah. So gender is basically a nominal variable. Absolutely correct. Right. Gender is a nominal variable. No doubt about that. Okay. Then let's see some of the discussion about the variables. So variable are of these many types. You can see here. So variable types we can have categorical, we can have numerical. Under categorical we can have nominal and ordinal. Under numerical we can have interval or ratio variable. Right. So these are the types of variables. So you can see categorical, again we can have nominal and ordinal. And you can see that in the nominal variable unordered list, so we have gender here, nominal, right? Or we can have marital status, unmarried, married, and divorced. Then we have state, New Delhi, Haryana, Illinois, Michigan. So these are nominal variables. So this was the thing about the variables. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in this? Okay. Now let's move to a very good question, which is from the efficiency of solar cell, and it's a very common question in NTA exam. Many times it have been asked. So it's a very general question. Like the question says that solar insolation on a rectangular module. So this is the dimension of rectangular module of 40 voltaic cell is 550 watt per meter square. So you are receiving this much. Okay, this is a rectangular photovoltaic cell, you can say, and you are receiving this much. So this is a solar insolation which is 550 watt per meter square, right? So this is basically the input, and the efficiency eta is 12%, right? And then what is the power output? So they are basically asking the output. So it's a very simple question, and the dimension here is 1.5 into 2. So these questions, always remember, in the case of efficiency, you have to remember one thing. Efficiency is always, I'll tell you how to solve it. So you can see, always remember that efficiency is output solar insolation divided by input into 100. Okay. So this is the basic funda. So here now we can understand that the solar insolation, which was input, it was 550 watt per meter square. Area we can calculate by multiplying both of them, 1.5 meter into 2, which comes out to be 3 meters square. Efficiency eta is 12%. These all are given to us. And then you can see here, let us assume the output power to be X. And efficiency will be output in terms of watt per meter square, energy intensity divided by solar insolation, which is input in watt per meter square, into 100. Because efficiency I am taking as a number. So you can see here, so 100 came out here, and then this will be 12 by 100, which is 12%. And output we have to calculate X, right? Then input I have, then output area is, then input I have 550 watt per meter square, which is given with area. So, and then area of rectangle is 3, so x by 3. So here it is like x watt per 3. So this is basically the area, right? So if you solve this for x, it will come out to be 198 watt, which is the correct answer. And you can cross check it by putting the values, right? Because you are calculating here output. So you can cross calculate the efficiency, which is 198 by 550. So your efficiency should be 198 watt per meter square, which is 198 by 3. And then you have 550, right? So you can calculate here, this will come out to be exactly equivalent to 100. So it will be so it comes out to be equally what have been given, like around 12%. So 198 watt is the correct answer. So if you can cross check also this, the efficiency wise, if you want to cross check it, right? So this was the question, and now we can go back to our question. So now you know how to solve these efficiency question of the solar photovoltaic cells. So 198 watt is the correct answer. Is it clear to everyone? All the participants? Okay. Okay. So this was question number 35 about the efficiency of the solar cell. Now let's move to the next question. It's a very simple question based on the literature you have been given. So literature say this is a very plain question. Question number 36, which is about phytoremediation, is an important tool for. So it's an odd one sort out of question, and basically phytoremediation's definition they have asked. So you can see that removing the toxic chemical from the polluted ecosystem, this is the best suited definition of the phytoremediation. So fourth is the correct answer for question number 36. I hope it is. So improve the health of the diseased plant, this is wrong. Improving dissolved oxygen from the aquatic ecosystem, this is also wrong. Eradicating the invasive species, this is also wrong. So it's an odd one out. And fourth is the correct answer for this. So removing the toxic chemicals from the polluted ecosystem is the basic definition of phytoremediation. So fourth is the correct answer for question number 36. Is it clear to everyone? Or anyone having any doubt in this? Anyone having any doubt in this? Anyone having any doubt in this? Okay. Now let's move to the question number 37. So here the basic terms have been given, like phytoremediation strategies. We have phytodegradation, phytostabilization, phytovolatilization, phytoextraction, phytofiltration, rhizodegradation, and all these have been given here in detail. Now let's come to the next question, which is again the statistics based question, question number 37, sorry, not 1. And based on Poisson's distribution. So it's basically one of the probability distributions, right? And asking the which of the statements are correct. Okay. So it says that it is a continuous probability distribution. No, Poisson is not a continuous probability distribution. Because I guess if I'm not wrong, what kind of distribution it is, guys? Poisson is what kind of distribution? It's not continuous. Poisson is not a continuous distribution. It's a discrete. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a discrete. So Poisson is basically a discrete distribution. Right. This is a very good question. So it's a discrete distribution. It's not a continuous. Then the second thing, it is applicable when n is the number of trials is indefinitely large and p is the probability of success is indefinitely small. So as I have told you that we have P, which is probability of success, and Q, which is probability of unsuccess, and P plus Q is always equal to 1 and is the number of trials. So the second statement, where we consider the limiting case of binomial. So it is correct. It is applicable when n is the number of trial indefinitely large, when n is the large, and p is probability of success indefinitely small. Means n is large and p is small, right? So then we take it, and it is basically a limiting case of binomial. We know that. And third, its mean is equal to variance. Okay, so we know that in the case of Poisson, mean is equal to variance. Right, mean is equal to variance is equal to NPQ. So this is also known. So the correct option for this is, because B and C both are correct. This is correct. This is correct. So B and C only one option, that is true. So option number 2 is the correct answer for question number 37. Is it clear to everyone? All the participants? Okay. So question number 37. B and C is the correct answer. So second is the correct option for question number 37. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in this? Okay. Now let's move to the next question. And here all the things have been given about the Poisson distribution. If somebody wants to read additional. Yeah, it's a good question. And as you know that question number 38, if I see. So it says that identify the correct sequence of the components of producer gas. Okay, from biogasification of coal in decreasing order of their concentration. So we have to identify what are the percentage of the gases in the producer gas, right? So let's first go to producer gas itself and know about it, and what is producer gas, and then we'll come to the question that which is maxima, which is minimum. So you can see here that producer gas is a fuel that is manufactured from materials such as coal, as opposed to natural gas, and it can be produced from various fuels by partial combustion with air, usually modified by simultaneous injection of water or steam, maintain a constant temperature, and obtain a higher heat content by enrichment of air gas with hydrogen, right? So this is the basic customary composition, and here you can see that percentage wise, if I will see, right? So you can see here in the case of producer gas, ordinary producer gas, okay. So nitrogen, which is 56.7%, you can see maximum. Then we have carbon monoxide, which is 19.8, which ranks second. Then we have hydrogen, which is 15.1, and then we have methane, which is 1.3, and oxygen also the same. So according to this, the nitrogen should be maximized. So in the given options, only one option is such option where we have two options are there, but carbon monoxide preceded by the nitrogen only in one option, because carbon monoxide is 19.8 followed by nitrogen 56.7. So nitrogen is maximum followed by carbon monoxide. So only one option is there where nitrogen is maximum and carbon monoxide proceeded by that. So third is the correct option. So question number 38. Third is the correct option. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in there? Anyone having any doubt there? Okay. Rest details have been provided here. You can go through them. Next. Now let's move to the question number 39. Right. It's a good question, and it's basically based on the wind velocity. So Beaufort scale. Right, Beaufort scale is used to classify which of the following meteorological parameters. So basically this scale is used for wind velocity. So correct option is option number 4. Now let's see some of the explanation why it is option number 4, wind velocity. So you can see here all the details have been mentioned. The Beaufort scale is an empirical measure that relates wind speed to observed condition at sea or land, and its full name is Beaufort wind force scales. So this is the full name, that is Buford wind force scale. And basically you have to remember the categories which can be seen here. Yeah, so this is the actual scale where we should see that if we see calm condition, then the wind speed of less than 1 kilometer per hour, right? And on tree it is still, and on land, smoke rise vertically and smoke drifts winds are still. So this can be seen. Then if we have light air, 1 to 5 kilometer per hour, this is the thing. So you can see this is Buford scale of wind velocity. For the you can say light, we have 6 to 11, gentle, moderate, fresh, strong wind 30 to 49 kilometer per second. Then we have near gale, storm, violent storm, hurricane force. So these all are the details about the Buford scale, but they ask a basic information that what is the Buford scale is used to classify which of the following meteorological parameters. So wind velocity is correct. Is it clear to everyone? Question number 39. Is it clear to everyone? Question number 39. Anyone having any doubt in this? Anyone having any doubt in this? Any participant, any doubt in this? Anyone? Okay. So this was about question number 39. Now let's move to the question number 40. It's a very simple question coming from your literature only, the mineral and rocks, right? And it's a very, very simple question, frankly speaking. It's just like a graduation based question. So it says that match the following iron oxides, right, with their chemical formula. So here the chemical formula is given, here the iron oxides are given, right? And we will try to match. So all of you know that this like two basic oxides which are there. So we have hematite, which everyone remember from school days. Hematite is Fe2O3. Then we have magnetite, right, which is nothing but Fe3O4. So both you can catch from here. So if I catch from here, then hematite, which was there Fe2O3, so this will go to 4. And magnetite, which is Fe3O4, this will go to second. So A is 4th, yeah, and then B is second. A is 4th and B is second. Still you have to take a decision because there are two options where this and this, A is 4 and B is second. So these options are out the moment you will match them. And now we will decide the C1, which is there, which is ilmenite. So ilmenite is basically this titanium oxide, and then we have limonite, which is FeO.H2O. So 4th is the correct option. So finally we choose after neglection also. So 4th is the correct option. So this is the correct match for these oxides. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in this? Anyone, any of the participants? Clear? Any doubt? Anyone? Anyone, any doubt in this? Okay. Okay. So we will stop it.
So hope you are enjoying the lectures provided by our foundation and you are working hard for your exam. In the next video, we will be coming with the questions starting from question number 41, and we promise you we will resume. Thank you very much.